All right, so now I am going to cut the paper for each one of my pages, the base of each one of my pages. That'll be the pockets. And I've already decided that I want them to be 8 by 8 inches in size. And so since they're going to be pocket pages and I have 6 pages, I need to cut 12 8 by 8 sheets. And I'm not even going to bother trimming off that little margin area with the barcode on it. I'm just going to worry about that later and when I use the scraps for photo mat. Okay, and I am going to save my cutoff pieces for photo mats. And now I want the corners of my pocket pages to be rounded, so I'm going to grab my corner chomper here, and I'm going to use the 1/2 inch setting because I like them a little more rounded, and I'm going to see if I can get through a couple of sheets at a time here. I don't know. Depends on whether or not my corner chomper is sharp enough here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this narrower double-sided tape. It's just under 1/4 of an inch. And I am going to run it along 2 of the sides here on these pocket pages. Since the top is, I want the top open, and then the left side is going to be attaching to the hinge. So I'm just going to run some tape along the bottom and on the right side. So now we still have our left side open to attach to the hinge, and we've got the opening in the top for the slide-in photo mats that I'm going to do. I'm going to do that for all the rest of these pages here, and I will go ahead and speed it up so you're not falling asleep. And I'll be back when I'm finished up. Okay, so now what I am going to do is I'm going to attach each one of these pages to the hinges. So let me grab the shell of the book. I'm going to make sure that now that the glue is dry that everything is laying flat, and it looks pretty good. Doesn't look like anything's crumpling up too bad here. When I do the front and back covers, I'm just going to go over it with the bone folder over these creases a little bit. All right. Now each one of the pages are going to attach from the left side, and it's just going to slide right over the top of the hinge here, like so. Okay? And you want to make sure when you attach the page to the hinge that you don't let the paper go all the way down so it's flush with the bottom of the hinge, because then the pages won't want to turn very well. You got to make sure that the score line, that the paper sits above the score line so the hinge can still move freely and the pages can turn. And instead of using tape on these. I'm actually going to use glue, and the reason is because I always have a trouble getting them on there straight and centered. And if I use glue, since it's wet, I have a little bit of wiggle room to move it around. And if you use the tape, once it's stuck, it's usually stuck, and you're going to rip the paper if you try and pull it off. If you're good at getting it on there straight on the first shot, go for it. But I already know that I'm terrible at it, so I'm going to use glue here. So I am just going to run a bead of glue. Let's see, actually, I think, well, no, I will put it on the page instead of the hinge. I'm going to run it on actually both pieces of paper, since it sits on two sides of the hinge. Got to make sure that both sides are glued. Glue is definitely messier, but I don't know, it just works better for me for getting it on there straight, and gives me enough time to move stuff around before it dries. Okay. Turn this a little bit. And then I am just going to slide it down over the top of this hinge. And I'm going to make sure I'm not touching below or on the crease line. I want to sit just above it, and I want to make sure that I'm centered here between the top and the bottom of the album. And that looks pretty good. So then I am going to press down and wipe off the excess glue. Oops. And see what happened there? It popped off the hinge. So see, that's the only problem with using glue, is since it takes a while to dry. You know, it's not stuck immediately, so stuff pulls up on you. It's a pain, but I still prefer it. All right. Stuck on the front, and I'm stuck pretty good on the back. Everything looks pretty centered. Let me look at it again from this side. Okay. All right, that doesn't look too bad. I'm just going to go over it here with my bone folder. All right, and then I am just going to do the same thing with every single page. I'm going to run some glue along the left side and then attach it to the hinge. Alrighty, now I have all the pages attached here to the hinges. So I am going to let this dry, and I am going to move on to cutting the paper for the base of my photo mats. Everything looks like it flips okay, so all right, I'm going to let this dry and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so the next thing I want to do is start cutting into the pretty papers. And what I usually end up doing when I make these albums is the first thing I do is I pull out the sheets of paper that I know I'm going to want to use for the front and the back covers. And I have already gone through the paper, and I decided that this is the sheet here that I want to use for the front cover. And what I usually like to do is leave about 1/4 of an inch margin all the way around the designer paper. So I've already measured, and what I'm going to need to do is cut these papers at 8 1/4 width by 8 1/2 height. And so like I said, this is the one I'm going to use for the front cover, and this is the one I'm going to use for the back cover outside, and then this is the front cover inside, and this is the back inside. All right, and they all need to be cut the same size because obviously it's all on the same size chipboard piece. So let me set the album aside here. All right, now this is the only one that has like pictures on it, so I want to make sure that I don't accidentally cut those off. I want to keep as much of the balloons as possible. So I'm going to start by cutting off this little excess piece here. All right, look and see what I said again. 8 1/4 width by 8 1/2 height. All right, so I'm going to turn this around because I want to cut the blank space off rather than the pictures at the top. And I am going to cut that at 8 1/2. And it is going to cut off part of one of the balloons, but I still have these there, so that's cool. And by 8 1/4 width, and I'm going to flip it again because again I don't want to cut into the pictures here. All right, and then let me grab the album here and I'll just show you. So see, as you can see, I've just got about 1/4 of an inch margin all the way around the paper here. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut the other 3 sheets the same size. And now this one here, since it's the chevron print, I still have to pay attention to whether it's, you know, which direction it's the top and the bottom and which is you know, the left and the right, because it's a chevron print. I mean, I could do it this way, but, you know, I think it looks better this way. So I am going to, again, cut off that little excess piece there. And I want to do 8 1/2 height. Now this one, I don't have to worry about any cutting into any pictures, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut without worrying about it. By 8 1/4 width. And this one is going to be the inside front. Oh, and the one that I just cut was the inside back. Not that it matters. And this is kind of the same thing. It doesn't really matter which direction I cut it in because it's kind of a quilted block pattern look there. So 8.5 in height by 8.25 width. Okay, and this is the back outside cover piece. So 8.5 by 8.25. All right. Let me grab my pieces here. And I have decided that I want to corner punch these with this punch. I think that's a really pretty design. And these punches can usually only handle about one sheet of paper at a time. Alright, so I have these cut and the corners punched, and I'm going to set these aside because I always do the paper and embellishing of the covers last, because unfortunately it'd get a lot of wear and tear and kind of beat up in the process of making the album. So I always wait till last to do it. I'm going to set these aside. And then I already pulled out the sheets of paper that I know that I'm going to want to put for the base photo mats on each one of the inside pages. And since the inside pages are 8 by 8, I want to cut each one of these sheets at 7.5 by 7.5 inches. I've got them all cut. Get rid of my scraps here and hang on to them for photo mat. And then I'm going to use the same corner punch here on each one of the inside pages. Alrighty, now I've got all the corners punched here on my bottom photo mats, and so the next thing I am going to start doing is designing the first page. So that will be the next step when we come back, is starting on the inside front cover.